it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And do you think that is because you came up in sports growing up, that having someone holding you accountable causes you to want to excel so much, even though it's not that you fear disappointing him, but to a point, it's...
The accountability is huge for me.
Yeah.
So...
Well, Jamie, welcome to Freedom Fighters Podcast. Appreciate you coming in and sitting in with us. I know Tanner and I talked about who we could get, and you were our first female invitee. So congratulations on that. You get to be the first there.
I'm honored. Thank you.
I think you're top 5. I think
when we were brainstorming, you're definitely top 5 that came to mind. So,
yeah. So I think it's 4th or 5th recording. So pretty new into this, still getting the hang of it. We've got a new studio, trying to get things better. So welcome. Why don't you just kind of start off, tell us a little bit where you're from, family life, stuff like that.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And small town, Wood River, Nebraska, 1,156 people.
Today or when you grew up?
I think it's probably more now because I think they have a Cargill boomed or something.
Moving on up.
Yep, definitely.
Where's that in respect to Omaha?
It's 2 hours away. It's in between Grand Island and Kearney. Okay. So, yeah. And small town girl. Met my husband in college, and it was after we got married. Well, actually before, he goes, "Do you want me to go to Omaha or Denver?" Because he's from Denver. I was like, "Omaha, it's shorter." And then 2 years after marriage, I'm like, "Let's go back to Denver." So God had different plans. So we stayed in Omaha.
Stayed in Omaha. Do I get to Denver often or?
No, not as much, but yeah. So my mom was a teacher. My dad was an insurance agent, and I always wanted to be a teacher. And I played basketball in high school, college, and became a teacher and now a real estate investor.
Okay, so where'd you and Nikhil meet? Yeah, both played sports.
So funny story is I went to Hastings College, and that summer before I went to Hastings College, I met Akil, and I thought he was a handsome hunk. He was super cute. We kind of talked a little bit, went to Hastings College, and I was like, we were kind of talking. And then all of a sudden, my best friend calls me. I've known her since I was 5, and she's like, "How do you know Akil Davis?" And I was like, "How do you know Akil Davis?" And she's like, "He's in my dorm room." I'm like, "Why is he in your dorm room?" And I'm like, "And how often is he in your dorm room?" And she goes, "Well, he saw a picture of you on my, whatever it was, dresser, whatever you have in dorm rooms back then." And he's like, "I know her." And she's like, "How do you know her?" And then she called me and she's like, "I'm with Akil." So
where was he at?
He was at UNK.
UNK.
Yeah. So I was in Hastings, UNK, played basketball for a year, won a national championship, was ready to retire. You can only play left bench for so long. You got the ring. And then, I don't know, I just felt like I played basketball my whole life. So it was time to just be done. So then I went to UNK and just enjoyed life a little bit. And then a year after I went there, I ended up coaching for my previous high school. And so that's actually where my coaching career started. And then I went to be a teacher as well. So
did you start off in your hometown coaching and teaching, or
no?
Did you come straight here?
Well, I was at Hastings College, then Kearney. So actually my junior year in high school, I transferred to Kearney High. So we moved to Kearney High. I wanted to play Class A basketball, had this dream of playing college ball. And so ended up at Hastings College. And I mean, it was super fun, but after a while, you just realize there's more to life than playing basketball, honestly. So then I was done for a year. I missed it, started coaching again. And then I would always play pickup games with the girls at UNK. One of my best friends was on the team there. So kept playing, actually got engaged, and I was asked to walk on at UNK. I was like, yeah, I'm good. Just lots of kind of just kept shutting it to the side. And so here I am.
So what kind of an influence did your parents have on your, your perspective of money? Your mom being a teacher, your dad in more of an entrepreneurial space of sales. Did that influence, kind of how you felt about money as a kid?
I would just say money, like I had a paper route. My dad's hands still to this day, he wrapped all the papers. So we had 4 paper routes as a family. We would get up at 5:30 every morning. He would wrap the papers. He would, especially on Sundays, he would just like shove the papers on me. I would rollerblade or ride my bike through people's yards. They'd get pissed off. But it was, that was like our family business. We would collect the money. It was like $7 a month, and we spent the money. So my idea of money was never.
Was it $7 a month in profit or $7 per?
Well,
paper
we
route?
usually made like $250 per
So it's
kid.
per week.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Your
so
cut was $7.
everyone paid $7 a month
Okay.
for the Omaha World Herald.
Oh.
Wait, Grand Island Independent. Yeah, one of them. Grand Island Independent it was. But after that, we all made like around $250. So that was like our first business, and like we never saved any of it. We just spent it. So
Pretty good money, 20 years ago
Yeah.
or 30 years ago when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So
we grew up like family vacations every year. We would camp all the time. I do think, now looking back, I'm like, I think I know why we camped. We loved camping. I love camping and fishing. I would always ask to stay in the hotel. My mom would too. And now that I look back, I'm like, they just didn't want to spend the extra $100. It's now that you know what you know now, it's like, oh, okay. But my parents always gave us a family vacation. It was always so much fun. Now knowing what I know now, it's like, like we didn't go to Cabo or Hawaii. We went to Minnesota, Canada, the camping spots, which was amazing. And I would never change that. So
tent camping or cabin camping?
tent, Cabela's 8-man bargain barn with a
best.
rip in it. And I'll never forget, it was a rip and my dad sewed it up. He got it for $250. It was like an $800 tent. So he always got the bargains. And we would, the air mattresses, not the air mattresses, like the pool, what do you call them? The inflatables. I would always sleep on those. So, yeah.
So then how did all that lead into teaching?
My mom was a teacher. I remember learning the word pupil, honestly, from her English textbook. So I would always play teacher. I would always help her prepare her room. And I would always act like I was a teacher. And so there was always red font, kind of like the Bible. Like red is when the teacher talks and then the wait time. So I would play teacher my whole entire life. So
What fascinated you about teaching? Was it the whole performance of it, or the sharing of knowledge, or what really drew you to it?
I honestly don't even know. It was something my mom did it, so I guess I was going to do it. And back in the day, I'm 41, but it was teacher or nurse. And I honestly didn't think I was ever smart enough to be a nurse. And so I'm like, well, yeah, I could be a teacher and I want to be a coach.
So why did you think that? Why did teachers were teaching other people not have to be smart, but a nurse did, in your mind?
I honestly don't even know. Right. Very interesting.
But was it more just the additional schooling involved to get, to be a nurse? It's kind of a completely different realm. So I can see how that would be.
Actually, I would say I wasn't very good at science and I wasn't very good at math. It didn't come natural to me, but everything else was pretty natural. So I would say I got A's and B's, but I always had to study, I had to work for him. My brother, he got A's and didn't even have to think twice. So I felt like maybe I put myself in a category of oh yeah, you can't do that. Now knowing what I know now, I'm I could have been a nurse easily, but
it wasn't in a book. You didn't have red letters that you could just
right.
Can't be in the middle of surgery with red letters and what do I do next?
Right. Yeah.
So, very nice. So you moved to Omaha after that,
Mhm.
finished school, then what? You got married before you
So we got
moved?
married in 2005. So I graduated early, so in December. And I actually was a student teacher at Westside. And that was in December, I think it was. And then it worked out. It was in Westside. It was the best. I got my student teaching experience, and then my cooperating teacher, amazing lady, she ended up getting pregnant, and then I took over her position. So I started in December, and then that next year she left me everything. And it was like, oh, thank you, God, because a lot of teachers have to spend a lot of money, their own money. And she walked out and was like, here you go. So, yeah.
Pardon my ignorance, but what's a cooperating teacher?
So I was a student teacher and she was in charge of me. So
it's kind of like your boss, your mentor,
Yep.
or mentee.
It was a internship, like the last stages before you become a teacher. So, and she would write my letters of recommendation. So if I sucked, she had to be honest. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
I've heard of student teaching, but I just never knew how the relationship works. So.
Yeah. So I was a teacher at Swanson. I think it was like 7 years. And honestly, year 7, I remember I was like, gosh, after a couple kids, I'm like, there's got to be something else out there. Like, I remember we had 3 kids. I was making $2,200 and we were paying $2,100 in daycare. And I remember asking my husband, I'm like, this is stupid. Like, we're paying, I'm getting $100 a month. Like, I'm worth more than this.
And that's only 9 months, or did you get paid year round?
193 days, contract days. And, it was Akil, my husband, he was starting his own business. So at this time, he was an insurance agent. He wasn't a financial advisor at that time. And knowing what I know now, I'm like, starting a business is hard. And so here I am like, I want to stay at home. And, he's like, no, you're not. You're in our insurance. You're getting $100, but we're also getting insurance free. So I, just took one for the team and just did what God told me to do. I was like, okay, I'm going to be the faithful wife and just go with it. So
how long did you teach in total?
18 years.
Okay.
So
did you do it long enough to get a pension?
Yeah, I have a pension. Well, no, not like you and your pension. I mean, I have a retirement.
You will once you, you were vested enough that you get something. I don't know how it works. But.
Working on that self-directed IRA. We're figuring that out. Yeah. So yeah, I taught 18 years, year 7. I asked one of the ladies at Westside, I'm like, there's something more out there. I don't want to teach 3rd grade for the rest of my life. So then I started teaching high school special ed. So then I moved to the high school and I was an assistant girls basketball coach. There, it was just amazing. And then I became a head basketball coach and then at a different school, and then doors shut and God said, oh, I have a different path for you. I was like, oh, okay. And so
that was a year and a half or so ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, and so I guess in our world, you hit 20 years of active service in the military and you get a pension.
No, not.
You're at 19 years and 11 months and you get out, you get nothing.
Right.
So like for me, I got out after 10 years. Ryan did a full 20. He gets a pension for the rest of his life and medical benefits, and I get diddly squat.
Yeah, no, that's not how it works in teaching. So I have money sitting and I get to decide what I want to do with it.
So it's more 401k based retirement.
Yep.
Okay.
Which I'm still learning, just so y'all know.
That's a financial advisor.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and so, I mean, sticking along in any career path for 18 years is significant. And so, I mean, through that, obviously there's ups and downs. It's a whole different culture in, the teaching community. But what really drove you to stay in that?
I would say when I went to the high school coaching, there's a gentleman, his name is DJ Rizak, and he was awesome. So he was our culture coach for our basketball team. And I was fascinated. He would come in, and I taught there, coached there for 12 years, 15 years. And he talked about mission, vision, values. And my head coach and I, Steve Clark, I was his assistant. And this guy, DJ, he's like, yeah, he did all this business. He's very successful, but it's because he has a mission, he has vision, and he has values. And we were trying to figure out wait, this works in a business, but how is this going to work with a bunch of 16-year-olds? You really think this is going to lead us to state championships? Isn't money easier? The outcome is money, right? So he helped us with our strategic plan. So our first year, he helped us establish our mission and our vision and our values. And then we had common alignment and common, communication and all the above. And then it just started building. And then we established, a business. You need your mission, your vision, your values. What is the outcome you want? So your vision or your core values, what are the action steps that are going to lead to your outcome? So we called it our culture playbook. So we did that with our basketball program. And I was fascinated with like everything that he did. I would take notes left and right. And I just wanted to be around like what he did because I thought it was super, super cool. So he let me go to some of his events where he like was the coach to other businesses. And then after that, I used the experience that we had as a coach and I helped a couple small businesses. And I mean, that was super fascinating. And that mission, that vision, the value, the common alignment, that's what I loved. It's like we had common language and it kept me at Westside. I love it because of that.
And
So
did that build year over year? Like, so you didn't change your mission, your vision, and your values. That was, if I started there my freshman year, I had the same mission, vision, values all 4 years.
Yeah.
And
it was respect yourself, respect each other, respect your school. And then like, I still know them to this. I mean, it's just, it did build like our first year, we didn't
the values, right?
Respect is our, we wanted girls to like, that was our mission is we wanted to teach girls to respect like themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that we've talked about before is just how from growing up in sports and military service, police service, those types of aspects, how much of the frameworks that goes into sports applies to entrepreneurship. Yes. And like, I think back, you're talking about that principle. I think, a principle that I was taught in youth football was discipline begins with focus. And we were told that drilled into us every single day. And I just kind of sparked back into my mind. Are there other principles that you think you gathered from teaching or from coaching that you see now has a real world application to business?
I would say teaching was very safe, honestly. Like I learned this last year. I was like, oh my gosh, this business world, like there are a lot of sharks. There's a lot of people that are very greedy. And yes, you get that in the teaching world, but like at the end of the day, usually people become teachers for the kids. I mean, generally, mostly, you know what I mean? There's always bad areas, but teaching was a very safe place. And I would say the culture playbook that we had in our basketball program it saved my life, to be real honest. Like when I was done teaching and coaching, that's actually what got me started. I knew right then and there, I was like, okay, if I'm starting a business, I need to do everything I learned with our basketball program. If we could win 2 state championships with a culture playbook, there's no reason I couldn't be successful.
So is that how you started off, by building a culture playbook for Jimmy Davis LLC?
I did. Yeah. And I was like, what's my mission? And I was like, what am I doing? And it does go back to, so my story, as soon as I was done coaching and teaching, I'm 40 years old and I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, God,
crisis.
Identity crisis. Like, God shut these doors and I didn't even know they were going to shut. But I remember going on a walk, it was like 4 months ago. And I forgot my AirPods and I was praying and I was like, Lord, like, this is crazy. And God and I, we were having a conversation on the walk and he goes, Jamie, do you remember like year 7 when Tatum was born? You prayed, Lord, will you provide a job for me where I can stay at home and still take care of my kids and just give me the same income? And God randomly, like 4 months ago, he goes, Jamie, not only have I've answered that prayer, but I've multiplied it. And that was kind of like you did. You weren't ready for me to quit at that time, but you've answered that prayer a little bit later than what I wanted. So
you always get the prayers when you want them, when you need them.
Yeah. So going back to that culture playbook, when I was done teaching, I applied for jobs, W-2 jobs. And like, because I taught for 18 years, like I did get paid a little bit more than, beginning teachers. And so you'd put in the salary, like, what do you want? And I was like, overqualified and rejection. And I'm like, this sucks. Like, do you guys know how I can like really help you grow? And I remember even asking Akil and his business part, I'm like, what about marketing? Like I could help you guys. They're like, oh, this isn't a good idea. And so it was constant rejection. And I was like, Lord, what the heck? Like, I'm a good person. Like, I can provide a lot of different things. And he just kept shutting doors left and right. And so I was meeting people left and right, like entrepreneurs, business people, people I knew. I would carry a notebook. And they were probably like, why does she want to talk to me? And I'm like, I don't know. God just told me, like, to call you up. I just want to figure out what I want to do. And it just led me to this one gentleman that I met in Florida. And it was 2 years ago, actually. My bestie and I, we were on a family vacation, and I'll never forget, we were always like, we should start some momcations. VRBOs, Airbnbs, which I didn't know the difference. I mean, I still don't, honestly. And I always pictured like a blue house with white shutters, and we're like going to do these momcations, and we could call it the Kendall house, the Emmett house, the Tatum house. We can get our kids designing. And so to me at this point, it was all a dream, like truly a dream. Here I am, a teacher. Who in the heck is going to get Airbnbs? Right. So we always joked about it. And then, like at this point, I really wasn't happy in my teaching and coaching position. I became a head coach. You know, I thought God opened those doors, and like I knew I shouldn't have gone through them, but I did because I had to do that. I needed to be a head coach. I wanted to be a head coach. And so that day we snuck away for coffee. I saw this older guy, and he was with another older guy. And I'm like, I bet that guy comes here once a month to Florida. We were in Florida, Pinellas County, the one that's getting flooded right now. And I said, I'm going to go talk to him. I'm going to see what he does. And my best friend, Rochelle, she's like, no, you're not. I'm like, no, I am. I'm going to do a Pursuit of Happiness Will Smith move. Like, I'm going to go talk to him. So I did. And, you know, an hour later, he just kind of shared what he did. And I was just always like, I was that person that I was always like, whoever buys that, they're going to be so loaded. Whoever does that, they're going to be so loaded my whole life. But it would never be me, ever. Like in my mind, it was never going to be me. I was a teacher. Like, I mean, honestly, it's really kind of sad. Like, just, I don't know, you make X amount of money, you really can't make more. Work harder, go get a second job. I wasn't financially literate. I knew nothing about finances. I did taxes for my first time like last week. Honestly, knew nothing about financial literacy. So that guy, after meeting with a ton of people, it kept leading me. I had one of our former daycare ladies. She told me she owns a salon. So she quit daycare, owns a salon, makes quite a bit of money, you know, owning that salon. They now own Eco Thrift, which they just started. So she inspired me. I met another teacher that flips houses. I met a realtor, one of my former students. He wanted to like have me be on his team, fill out the stuff. And after that, I was like, I should call that guy in Florida, because I didn't want to be a realtor, but I wanted to do what that guy did in Florida.
So you met him in Florida, and all these other people were in Omaha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I met him 2 years ago, and I actually forgot his name. So after that realtor meeting, I called my bestie and I was like, hey, do you remember that guy's name? And do you have his number? I didn't even have his number. And she's like, yeah, here it is. So I called him up. I said, hey, my bestie and I are going on a momcation. 1, do you have any places that we can stay? And 2, can you teach me like what you do again? And 3, do you remember me? And he goes, well, of course I remember you, blah, blah, blah. And this is where God just really connected the dots, because here I am trying to figure out what I want to do. And he said, what is your why? Before I talk to you, what is your why? I was like, oh.
Had you already done your mission?
Yeah, no. I had not done it. Like, here I am as a coach. You can't come under our court unless you know your why. Like, that's just what we preach. Like, you have to know your why. And even in my classroom, it's like, what is your why? Why are you coming to school? It's just something that I've always lived by. And so here I am trying to find a new career, and not once did I think about what is my why. So I just felt like that was an aha moment of like, oh, duh.
Have you ever read the book Start With Why?
I have not. I need to.
Pretty good book.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the put your mask on before putting others' masks on. Like you get so good at coaching others to do it that you forget to coach yourself. And sometimes it takes that outside perspective to remind you what you already know. Mm-hmm. And Nicole and I, we find this constantly. Like, we'll listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video or something where they just put frameworks to things that we already understand. And it's like a slap in the face most times of like you're right, God, I should have been doing that, you know? And so I definitely relate to that question right there is what is your why?
Yeah.
You know, and especially when you get so tunnel vision, all these doors are slamming in your face.
Rejection.
Yeah.
Rejection. And I've really never been rejected. Like that was hard. So yeah. So he asked me, what's your why? Actually, he goes, I'm going to give you an assignment, figure out what your why is. And then you need to Google what investor, 3 things. He said, figure out what investors are, realtors, and wholesalers. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, let's meet again on Friday. And this was like on a Tuesday. I had that done in like 20 minutes. So I'm like sitting here, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to wait till Friday to meet him, you know? So then I was like, okay, figured out what my why was, Googled all 3 of those. And then he said, prioritize them. Where do you want to see yourself? So
I'm going to make fun of you for a second.
okay, great.
You just said he gave you 3 things to look up. What is an investor? What is a realtor? And what is a wholesaler?
Mm-hmm.
Well, can you kind of, I think we know what a realtor is, but the other 2 at least.
Well, to me, when it comes to real estate, I thought it was only realtors. Like that's just how you deal with money. I also, when I Googled all 3 of them, an investor, like entrepreneur, like how can you use real estate to just grow and enhance? And like, there's just so many opportunities with investing. My husband does it, you know, financial advising. I'm like, oh, but wait, I went to all those boring meetings and like, you know, I was sitting next to wholesalers that were trying to get them to sell the products, but I'm like, I could care less about what they talked about. Now I actually really care and pay attention. But yeah, investors, like you just figure out ways to use real estate to make money. I mean, that's what I think. And then wholesalers is connecting people. You find a house, you connect them with an investor, which I thought was great. And then a realtor is you follow a bunch of contracts and you buy and sell houses. It's a little more transactional, in my opinion.
Not to make it fun for it. When you first started, the first thing you said were you're a real estate investor.
Yeah.
So are you a real estate, by your own definition, what you just said, are you a real estate investor or wholesaler?
Real estate investor.
Okay.
Yep. I used wholesaling this whole year to get me to understand. And I had a hard time, like talk about identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've shared with both of you, you're a teacher and a coach, you go into a room and everybody loves you, right? You start out as a real estate investor because those prioritizations that I said, I want to be an investor first. So that's what I told my mentor. I said, wholesaling, I like that too, because you're connecting people. I think that's awesome. So I think I probably need to do that to probably get to the investor side because I don't have any money. How can I be an investor? I don't have any money. And I said, I don't really have any desire to be a realtor. I mean, so that's where that's where that came from.
The reason I ask is I've heard you introduce yourself, and 99.9% of the time you've introduced yourself as a wholesaler.
I know. I need to change it. Real estate investor.
We've been working on that.
Yeah, Nicole, his wife. Yeah, definitely. She's like, you need to work on your pitch when you describe yourself. I said, I know.
Not to
it's an identity issue.
How important is the identity of I'm an investor and thinking about all the tools that are in your tool belt versus I'm a wholesaler. What I do is wholesale.
How important?
Towards your future success, like just that mentality shift of I'm an
I
investor.
use wholesaling as an opportunity, as a tool. So like now, knowing what I know, like as an investor, if I find a deal, I mean, depending on how many I have going on, I'll definitely share with you. But, I gave up quite a few home run deals this year. My mentor even said, do not take it. You're not ready to flip. Just continue to learn the business. And so I used wholesaling as a tool to figure out everything. I mean, I still have so much to figure out, but now I'm like, I'm ready to find that first. Like I'm ready to do it without, I always want partners, but it's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to be the investor.
Why do you want partners though?
Because I like teamwork. I love the collaboration. I really hate working alone, honestly. I mean, that was this year. Is when you start your own business, it's freaking lonely. It's really lonely. Like, there were moments this whole entire year I struggled with identity. I've never been depressed in my whole entire, you have depression here and there, but here you are, your whole identity is stripped from you. I'm no longer a teacher and a coach. I have a business that I started that I had no business starting. Didn't even know what taxes were. I had to Google capital. Like in my mind, I was teaching people the capital of the United States of America. And so when I first started, it was, building my buyer's list. It was putting out bandit signs. I had to Google what bandit signs were. I had to Google what age stakes were. My mentor said, you need to put out X amount of bandit signs. I'm like, I don't want to act stupid. What are bandit signs? And then I'm like, you want me to do what? Like, no, that's something I said I would never do. You want me to knock on doors? You want me to do what? But I just did everything. I did everything he said because I trusted God. Because the day I quit teaching, I will tell you, I was very lost. And he put his left hand on my shoulder. God did, not my mentor. And he said, Jamie, I've got your back. He said, trust me, I've got your back. I'll take care of you. Just share my story. Enhance the kingdom. And so that's that. This whole year was when I did not feel like doing anything. And I'm like, okay, who am I? Where's my identity? It was, I've got your back. Just go.
And it's easy to say that in hindsight, but in the moment, especially when things are going wrong or, a deal falls through or all those, these inevitable problems happen, how difficult is it to not revert back to what's familiar and what's safe?
I would say at that time, I didn't even know what was safe. Truly, my whole first year, it was, there were moments of just laying in bed and I'm like, I don't want to get up. And not a lot of people know that. Very few people know that, but it truly was what am I doing? Is this really teaching is all I knew. So I would hear people being like, oh, if I could quit my W-2 job to go into real estate, I'm like, dude, just freaking quit. Guess what? If you spend time doing it, you will make money. So I was able to multiply by working part-time and not working in March and picking my kids up at 2:00 and taking a lot of days off because I didn't even want to get up. And that's where God just totally led the way. The days where I was like, I don't want to do anything, I would get this random phone call on, hey, Jamie, we have this opportunity. And I'm like, of course you would, God. Right? Days that there's one house that we had in Valley and it was a smaller house. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I had an investor call, Jamie, I'm looking for a 2-1, 700 square feet, something small. And I'm like, of course you would, God. That has been this whole entire year, the whole year. It's
reminds me of that book you gave me, When God Winks,
Squire Rushnell. Yeah. I use it all the time. People talk about God nudges or whatever you want to call it, but every single time that you're thinking it, almost like the Facebook effect, right? Mm-hmm. You have a thought and then the ad pops up on Facebook. That's how it is when you have a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Is that thought pops into your head and then God's over there making things happen. And are your eyes open enough to see the winks that he's giving you? Right. And I think that has been the biggest thing that I've gathered from this entrepreneurial journey is I need to watch out for the winks because mm-hmm. I've used this analogy before, but God's sitting there with billboards and I'm just sitting here looking at my problem like, God, where are you? And he's like, over here, just wake up, Yeah.
Yeah. Reticular activating system. Mm-hmm. If you want to buy a new Subaru Outback and just make up a car, but start driving down the street and all you do is see Subaru Outback. So it's just opening up your RAS, your reticular activating system.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's funny though, when different assignments that I had, one of them was to analyze a deal. I think I talked to you. I'm like, I just need somebody because I don't know how to put a house under contract for the right price. If somebody says, oh, I want to sell my house for $200,000, I'm like, okay, sounds good. It's negotiation, sales, that wasn't, I'm like, oh, that's what you want. Okay. So one of my assignments was to analyze a deal, learn how to analyze a deal. So here I am Googling, how do you analyze a deal? So then I joined Tarek El Moussa's homeschooled program. And that was actually where I learned more of the business side, definitely tasks I had to do, but creating a logo, creating a website, I had the LLC, but just creating different things. And then like, what is my business title? And so a lot of times people are like, they can do that really quickly. But for me, like my logo means something. It's a house with a heart and it's open. So my mission is to use real estate investing as an opportunity for everyone to grow. That includes the buyer, the seller, and myself. And how can we have growth in this? So when I picked my logo, that was huge. When I picked my business title, like, you need to get an LLC. And I'm like, well, what am I going to title it? Like, it has to mean something. And it was Connect the Dots Consulting, because I wasn't going to use wholesaling. But, Connect the Dots Consulting, you're connecting people. And Akil, my husband, he helped with that. And it truly is God connecting dots on days where I'm like, what in the world? Like, it's pretty awesome, actually. So,
Oh, that's great.
So
yeah.
You said your mission just now. Did you go through the whole thing? Mission, values? I forgot what all you said. But
Yeah. So,
vision, values.
yeah. And it was like, what is my why? Like, I had to Google what real estate investor was, right? So,
Let me back up a quick question. So you met this guy, random guy in Florida, call him up a year later or so. What did he say to make you become a real estate investor? Just by that, the follow-up call. What made that click in your head?
I would say long ago, year 7 of teaching, I always knew something else was out there. So my bestie and I, this was our second trip, and we would always talk about getting Airbnbs, like momcations, like how can we do this? But it was seriously always not even a dream. It wasn't even a reality, in my opinion. None. Like, it was something somebody else did. We were never going to do that, ever.
So like, it'd be cool to walk on the moon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
and that's truly where my mind, like, unless Akil makes a ton of money this year, this ain't going to happen, right? So when I saw that gentleman, it's easy for me to talk to people, but I was like, I don't know. I think he has this, like, I don't know. It was just something that it was God nudging me. That's what it was. I mean, I know it was God nudging me. He's started this journey long ago. And looking back, knowing what I know now, it's like he has been connecting the dots left and right from a long time ago.
He's chipping away at you and chiseling. And I get that. And I think a big part of it is seeing this thing that seems intangible to you, but there's a real person that did the thing that you want to do. And it just makes it so much more real. And through, I think the exercise you do is great. That's what we teach people to do, the same thing. But then creating your own brand around it. Like for Nicole and I, when we were going to the RIA meetings, we'd sit in the back and we'd just be like, wow, look at all these people. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. And we just didn't want to talk to anyone. Like, we'd just sit by ourselves and maybe talk to someone at our table. If we didn't have to, we'd just sneak out the back.
Yeah.
But then when we got business cards, and I was still in the Army at the time, we got business cards that said investor on it. And when we started handing those business cards out, it was almost like that was where the mental shift came from of, we're already investors, and I teach people this now when they come to me and they say, "Hi, I'd like to be an investor someday." I'm like, "Okay, then be an investor. You're an investor." I'm like, "Oh, but I haven't done anything." I'm like, "Well, you're in your education phase. That's a huge chunk of it. It took me 2 or 3 years of education, but I didn't realize I was already an investor because I was changing where my time went." And so I think that identity shift and then creating a brand around it, a brand that doesn't own anything, the LLC doesn't have any holdings, but that gave you the confidence to be like, I'm legit now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would say I went to Dallas last Monday, and sitting in a room full of 100 plus, Pace Morby was there, Mike Hambright was there, all of these men, few women, like, they were sharing their stories. And when you're surrounded by people that have failed, and like, I felt like I could conquer the world. It was like going on a missions trip. I mean, that was truly that. This last week has given me, like, I'm ready. Let's go. Okay. Phase 2. Because I feel like, I was telling my husband the other day, I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't want to go door knocking anymore. Like, I have this like paralysis going on. Like, I don't want to really cold call anybody because we're working on direct mail. Like, just so it's a different mindset. And I was like, so I was able to make X amount of money this last year. So now it's like, what if I don't make that? What if I'm doing something new? Like, why don't I keep doing what I did last year? Well, I don't love knocking on doors. I don't love, you know, some of the things that the hustle. I'm like, okay, how can I think smarter, not harder, like all of the above? And so Akil goes, it's kind of like when you're a freshman and you are in the state championship. Like, you don't know any better. You don't have anything to lose. Like, you don't know what was, you don't know what's out there. I'm like, that was really a good analogy for me, is like, oh, okay. And so it just gave me a little bit of motivation. It's like, okay, so we're going to try something new to find distressed properties. And if it doesn't work, I can always go back to what I did, you know. So it's just a different mindset. Like, now I'm on year 2 and it's like, okay.
So unpack
how
the
do we
business
keep going?
a little. Like, what do you start off wholesaling?
Mm-hmm.
Still wholesale. What do you do differently? How does connect the dots work differently than traditional wholesaler? And what I mean by that is there's a lot of shady wholesalers out there.
I would agree.
There's a lot of
Shady, right?
shady.
Shady sharks.
We're PG here.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that, I mean, lie to people, they'll scam people, they'll whatever. I mean, I don't want to put wholesalers in a box. It's any profession, whether you're a lawyer, dentist, plumber, whatever it is, that that run the gamut. But what do you do differently?
I love people. I love helping people. So my teaching background, it truly is like, when I picked my logo, it was a heart and it was a house and it was an open heart. And for me, it's easy to relate to people. Like, I'm empathetic. I feel everyone has a story. And so the stories that I've gone through, like when you've hit rock bottom, I love to help people figure out, like, I love to problem solve. I love to help them. It sucks when I can't help them. It bothers me. So the teaching mindset is, how can we get this person from point A to point B? I would say at the beginning is, as a teacher, I was like, this is all I'm going to make. I mean, I remember with Tanner and Nicole, like, Jamie, you can make more money than this, right? So knowing your value. So for me, my value was just kind of like being a missionary. Like, how can God use me to help other people? And I truly feel like even now, like, you put more money in marketing. So it's like, I have to be a little bit more business savvy, but still make sure that the clients are taken care of always. Right. So, like, no matter what, is like, how can I help bridge this gap? How can I help problem solve? And for me, it truly is about the seller. Yes, I need to be taken care of. I usually leave myself out, which I'm learning not always to do that, like knowing your value and then making sure the end buyer is also taken care of. So, I mean, I think of everybody involved, and I put myself in everybody's position, and especially the sellers. I remember one of our first deal, the lady was going to walk away with $5,000 and I could have made like $60,000 on that. And there's no way I could sleep at night knowing that she wasn't going to have a place to live after that.
Unpack that. Why could you have made $60,000 if she was going to make $5,000?
So she owed like 63 on her house. And as you want to figure out what the starting point is, like, what do you need to get going? Her house she didn't have any running water. She was in foreclosure. She'd probably get red tagged, honestly. Like, it was pretty gross. And she wanted to start over, but she just didn't know how to get from point A to point B. And most importantly, I'm like, do you have a place to go? She's like, yes, we have a place to go. And then for me, this was at the beginning. It was like, okay, well, what do you need? She's like, well, I need my house being paid off. I was like, okay, 63. All right, what do you need to get a fresh start? She's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, 5,000? She's like, yeah, sounds great. So,
and you could have sold it for 120, 130,
yeah,
something along those lines.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of wholesalers, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, that's what a lot of wholesalers do.
Mm-hmm.
They get that information, like, oh, I can get this for 65. I know I can get 120 for it. I'll make the difference.
So how do I set myself apart? I want to, one, make sure they are taken care of from point A to point B. Because if we gave her $5,000, she was not going to win. So how can we all win?
And I think a lot of this, so you're saying that homeowner was ignorant to what she needed, how she could get a fresh start. If she doesn't get that education, then she more than likely back in the same position 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier you were ignorant towards money and finances and stuff like that. You didn't know that on a teacher's salary, I could possibly have done this. You said other people were doing, other teachers were flipping and stuff like that. I find that to be systemic in our society. Like I think Nebraska just passed a law last year before, something like that, where now they're starting to teach financial literacy to kids, but most people don't have that. And it's a sad situation. Like,
it's very sad.
People are going to be working to the day where they retire at 60, 70, 80 years old, not because they want to, but because they have to.
Yep.
Well, and that's part of where the wholesaling laws came from, is because there is such a gap in education. And as real estate professionals, we're dealing with houses all the time. Like, even if you're not extremely accurate, a rookie could probably look at that and say, I think this house is worth 110, 120, whatever it is. But the homeowner doesn't, because they look at one house every 7, 10, 15 years. And what people are doing is they're intentionally going to find those people, take advantage of them, make that huge spread. And it didn't raise issues until maybe the kids or grandkids or something see that property just sold for $200,000, and my mom or my elderly grandmother, whatever, just walked away with nothing. Like, that you took advantage of her. And that's where all the issues came from. And I think that, and that's why they want a licensed real estate agent to be involved, because agents are required to disclose what they believe the property is to be worth. Now that's not to say that all real estate agents are ethical too. There's definitely people taking advantage in different ways. But I think that what you just said there is that you couldn't sleep well at night knowing that you got 60,000 and they walked away with 5.
Right. Which that did not happen.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So
yeah.
And I think that if more people were like that, that would be terrific. And there's probably a plethora of other deals going on in town where the wholesaler is perfectly fine sleeping at night knowing that they made 60,000. They're going to say it's the fruits of my labor, and that's an adult that did a deal with an adult, and they got to live with it.
Which is all true.
Right, which is all true. And
Yeah.
I not to shame them at all. The biggest thing that I have a problem with is the wholesalers that go in and say, "Oh, your property's only worth 40,000, but I'll give you 5." That's the unethical part that I have a problem with. I don't know where I would fall if I found a deal with that much meat on it. That would put me in a ethical dilemma. But what do you think is the solution systemically to how we fix that? And like you said about the education or transparency, that's part of why there is a realtor commission or realtor board and commission of realtor or real estate agents. How do we systemically solve that?
I would say
Once you're done with this, you can cure world hunger too.
I can what?
Cure world hunger.
Okay,
I think that might be a little bit easier.
Let me put my badge on. Mrs. America. No, I would say, honestly, I've probably dealt with more shady realtors than I have wholesalers, for real.
Me too.
And I would also say that I think it's an ethical problem. It's like a personal problem. It's a greed problem. It's like they need Jesus. I mean, for real.
Right.
I think, being in the teacher world, like, even though there were kind of like crappy teachers, like, their heart was seriously for the kids. No matter how stressed they were, like, they were there for the kids. They definitely weren't there for the paycheck. Maybe some of them, I don't know, but like, they were there for the kids, right? So what I've learned in the business world is, it is truly like it's an internal problem. Like, how are you going to just be a better person? Right? It's ethics. Like, no matter how many classes you take and how many checks you put in that box to say, I'm going to be, ethical and follow the rules and do this and do that. It's like, at the end of the day, you are who you are when no one's looking. So, I would, just keep educating people left and right. And, I'm reading a book. What is it? The Psychology of Selling. Right.
I have
And
that one.
for me, it's like there was a point where, okay, how can I make as much as I did this last year? And even for a short time, I'm scared about like, what if I don't? Like, I want to contribute to my family. I mean, if I want to go on vacation, I'm not asking for approval. I'm going to just let him know when I'm going. Right. But it's also like, I want to contribute to that. And I think you just have to be ethical in everything that you do, and just hope and pray that people choose that route, and they don't always do that.
I think what I'm gathering from that is be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And I couldn't tell you who said that, probably Martin Luther King or something like that. But I mean, that's all we really can do, and act in a way that Jesus calls us to act, and hope that rubs off on other people. I agree. I've seen way more realtors that are unethical. Granted, the wholesalers that I've worked with that are unethical, they're blatantly, realtors are a little more subtle with it, and they're, it's backhand ways of being, unethical. And that's why I wound up leaving the board of realtors, that I just don't agree with how people are acting and the hypocrisy in it. And I'm not paying fees to an organization that I don't agree with the values of.
Right.
And so I don't have the answer to it either. I don't know how we systemically change this whole thing, because you're right, it is a people problem.
I would say too, like when I haven't knocked on doors and then I knock on them like 2 weeks later, like they've, the seller ended up refinancing their 2.4% house to now 8%. And they couldn't make their $1,400 payments, and now they're asking to pay $1,800. So even that, like the banks, it's like at the end of the day, it's like, what can I do to help the person that God has called me to help?
Well, that's the thing. Banks are incentivized. Like that person writing that mortgage is incentivized to write that mortgage. They don't care whether they get paid on it getting through underwriting. They don't, they don't care what happens after.
Yeah.
And people are incentivized incorrectly, I think. Like you're incentivized morally, at least, to get a deal that you feel is morally good for everybody. And you're not willing to bankrupt your morals to get a deal. Other people are. And put it simple, I think the answer is the Bible. To answer your question earlier, whether we are Christians, Christian adjacent, or agnostic, in America, we come from, our values in America are based off the Bible. So I think that's where, as society, we should go back to, personally. But
So what did you wind up doing with that deal? How did you handle that temptation of 60,000?
So I ended up figuring out where she was going to go, and her house needed 70 grand. Like it was a lot. And I'm like, 30 grand, would that help you get going? And then that deal, I partnered with my end buyers. So I said, hey, just give an offer. And actually one of the guys I walked it with, he was going to cheat me out on more money than I could do. And I knew that. I was like, this is a home run deal. And then I had another guy walk it, and they actually wanted to keep upping the price. And I was like, oh, no. This is not an auction. Because if we keep upping the price, then I could have given her more. So that's,
what do you mean by upping the price?
Like they wanted to, 115, 117, I'll give you 118, I'll give you 119. I'm like, nope, no, we're stopping. So I originally got the 3 offers, and I told the first guy, I said, hey, you can have it at this. Don't ever screw me over again. I mean, knowing what he could have made. So at that time, it's like, I even had a private lender that was going to give me money to flip it myself. I think there's just a lot of money that was left on the deal in that.
So what was the conversation like when you went back to her after the 5,000 conversation?
That was actually part of the conversation. Like I was just trying to gauge what she needed. So I knew.
So you immediately told her, I believe your house is worth more, and offered her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So she was willing to take 70, round number, and then you offered 100 or something.
93. Yeah. Yep.
So
But it's also knowing your numbers. I feel like a lot of wholesalers, like I think my breaking point, I guess not breaking point, but growth was when I joined the Tariq Al-Musa's homeschool program. When my mentor said, you need to learn how to analyze a deal. Like you need to learn. You don't need somebody with you. You need to learn. So I learned a repair cost estimator. He's like, go through, I think Owen Dashner, he's like, you need to go through 100 houses and you need to figure out how to analyze a deal. I was like, this is like the first week. I didn't even know who he was at the time. I was like, okay, sounds good.
I feel like we all have an Owen Dashner story.
I will never forget. I remember the first time I met him, he was in the bar and he was buying everybody's shots. And that was my first, I was like, I need to hang out with you. Who are you? You're Owen Dishner? Like, who are you?
I remember that.
You were there.
Yeah.
But
he just closed a really big deal and he was buying everyone drinks and he was having the time of his life.
Yeah. So, great. But that wisdom of like analyzing the deals, like I really took that to heart. And I'm like, I'm going through these houses and I didn't even know what soffit and fascia and how to wrap a window and, just all of that stuff. So I do think people put houses under contract and they really do not know. For me, I'm very like the teacher in me. It's like, I want to go through it so I can get really good at analyzing the deal. Like how much does it cost to truly replace the window or wrap the window or fix the all of that. So just going through the process and doing a deal analyzer, doing a repair cost estimator, meeting with contractors, figuring out what the average for Nebraska is. That's helped me. I feel like I've been like 5 to 10,000 off on like my rehab. So when I can do the rehab, I can get the house at a price where everyone can win. So I have to know the numbers. And now, especially for me, it's like, if I'm going to buy this, I really have to know the numbers. But
so that's why you partnered with somebody the first time, because you just didn't know.
Heck yeah. Okay. Yep.
So why do you think that Scott took the time to mentor you? Like he doesn't need to. He has a portfolio. What do you think in his heart made him go, I want to help this person?
So there was a point where I did ask him that. I was like, why are you spending time with me? He's like, well, there was a point in my life when somebody took a chance on me. So he was a car.
That's incredible.
Yeah. He was a car salesman. And I still to this day, I'm like, I had no idea. So
I don't think we said this, but you haven't really paid him. Like he kind of just started doing this out the kindness of his heart.
Keep that on the down low.
Initially,
that could be a new business opportunity.
Initially, though, he started, investing time in you without any fruit. I mean, obviously, there's ways to get paid on the backside, but initially, he started helping you without. So, you think if you wouldn't have done those 3 things that he asked you at the beginning, he'd still be helping you?
No. So it's really interesting because I've had people reach out to me, friends, and it has been a waste of time. But in this journey, I don't feel like anything is a waste of time. Like your first few years, you sit down with somebody for 2 hours and you help them get to where they want to go. They ask you questions and then they don't do anything with it. So for me, rejection after rejection after rejection, it was seriously God connecting the dots in miraculous ways, honestly. And I mean, I was like just waiting. I'm like, seriously, we have to wait till, Friday to meet. And yeah, so I took off and I asked him, I said, why me? He's like, because you did what I asked and you kept doing everything I asked.
That's the biggest thing is showing up. Like someone's going to take an hour and you ask them a question. How can I do this? They say, hey, read this 3 books or look this up or whatever it is. Do it quickly, do it well, and then report back to them. Hey, you said to do X, Y, and Z. I read this book. I looked this up and I did this, and, give them some kind of book report or whatever it is. And they'll be a lot more apt to help you in the next thing that you ask for.
So there is a catch to that though. So now we're at the point. I remember he goes, Jamie, you are all over the place. You need to stay focused. You want to wholesale? Do you want to flip? Where do you want to go? I was like, and then he's like, and you want Airbnbs? He's like, you need to focus. So I didn't understand oh yeah, I should probably focus, just build your capital, do this. So, year 2, figure out, like my years go from like May or October to October, right? But I said, okay, I'm ready to flip. Like, here are my new goals. Like, I'm going to flip. I'm not going to give up a home run again. I mean, I might, if I have like 3, I can't take them all on. Right. And then we want to acquire 2 rentals, like as a family. So that's my goal. And then I'll continue to wholesale. And he goes, if you're going to flip, I'm going to need some compensation. Because I am a lot of work, like, I'm like, I ask questions all the time, and it's safe to ask him questions because he's outside. Like, I don't necessarily want to ask. I'll ask you guys, but you just don't. For me, you want to bring that outside knowledge here, I guess. So it was more safe for me to ask somebody that's not investing here. So, but now he is going to invest here. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
Which is kind of something I'm always like, if I were to give back, I'm like, there would be nothing more than to like say, hey, here's a deal. You want to, jump on it. And that's where we're at right now.
And that's kind of what I meant by getting compensation to backside. So he's been pouring into you, but now he's starting to invest in Omaha. Now he has somebody with boots on the ground, and he can invest here. He can ask you, hey, can you go look at this? You find a deal, you bring it to him first because he's poured all this into.
Yeah.
So while the first year he might not have gotten compensated, there are plenty of ways to get compensated on the back end. So that's kind of what I was alluding to.
Yeah.
Well, and I definitely relate to the checks and balances of that, because when I do new client calls, Nicole and I do the same thing. Is we're vetting them, whereas when we first started, we were probably taking every call we could. We're like, you want to do business with me? Let's do it. Now we're a little bit more intentional with it, and it's, we have a call scheduled for this time. You don't pick up, I'll give you one chance to call me back. After that, probably not going to call you back.
Like people that want to coach? That want your coaching?
We mentor our clients and teach them how to invest. We're both licensed, and so, but we are vetting them just as much as it's like people come into it with this, I'm providing the service, so they're vetting me. And it's like, but I'm also vetting you. I don't know that I want to give you all my time and all the experience that we've built over the years. So we're doing those checks and balances. And I remember our first conversation, I was in that mood of like, I was burnt out with real estate at the time. Like, things were just not hot, and I wasn't closing deals and stuff. And I was praying, for partnerships, and I just need guidance. God, where am I supposed to be going right now? And I'm not even joking.
Crazy.
It was absolutely crazy, because it was the same week that Ryan came to me and said that, I got this idea for this podcast. Like, do you want to do it? And then Automation Destination, Nick, who's now my business partner in that industry. And then it's just all these things. And then, you and I got on an intro call because I had a lead come in through Bigger Pockets when I used to pay for leads. And you're basically like, I got this deal and I don't know what to do with it. Like, that's like pretty much how you started the phone call. I'm like, okay, well, I'm Tanner, let's, figure out what you're trying to do and all this stuff. And throughout that, it was just, instantly I saw that you were just like, I have this family that's in a tough spot and I want to help them, but I don't know how. And, we probably talked for 45 minutes just about, how the whole real estate thing works. And you told me about your mentorship and all that stuff. And then it turned into us sitting down with those sellers that is a long time coming deal.
That was a God thing.
It was
totally
incredible. Yeah.
And that was, I knew that it was subject to. So Scott, he did a lot of short sales and subject to. So creative financing. So one of the questions I asked him, what is creative financing? So then it was like, know the interest rate, what are the monthly payments? And so I knew at that point there was enough to figure out like, okay, this is creative financing. They owe too much on the house, blah, blah, blah. So I was Googling who in Omaha, Nebraska knows what subject like creative financing is. And it was Tanner. And then it was Nicole came, and that was the beginning. That was a year ago. That was October, October 5th, honestly, of last year. It was about a year ago.
I feel like it was almost 2 years ago now.
It might have been.
I think it was almost 2 years ago, because with the deal that we wound up doing, I think the dates on that paperwork are like June of last year. And we had met a couple months prior to that. So yeah, but I know, through that, obviously became friends with Akil. I think he's a phenomenal guy, and you and Nicole became friends, and just, it was talking real estate, and we sat down with those sellers and stuff, and I'm talking to Nicole, like, I really think this is a good deal. Like, let's see what we can do to help them, and we can take this deal down, and then we go into church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And who do you think's sitting in the back row church but Jamie and her family? And it was just like the church. We've both been going there for a while. Yeah, never. And like I said, I'm blown away by all the God winks.
So that it just gives me the goosebumps, because that has been my whole real estate story. Honestly, just random people. Like when I don't feel valued, Ben Harrell, honestly, he was one that called, and it was just at the perfect timing, because I had some people are like, well, what is your value? And, when somebody says that to you, it's kind of like, well, what is my value? I can't hit a hammer. I don't know how to analyze a deal at this time. Like, what is my value? And when somebody says, Jamie, your value is you can connect people, you can talk to people, you can help people. Like, you had shared that, but I didn't quite understand that at that time.
I tried to recruit you from the start.
Yeah.
And she was basically like non-committal. I was like, I just kind of want to, I want to talk to other realtors, and, but I tried to bring her on immediately, because I was like, you are good at what you do and you care about people. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to find people in this industry that truly care about other people. A lot of, like we talked about, the greed is so prominent in doing real estate deals, because everyone loves the vision of the jets and the fancy cars and all that stuff. And they think, if I just get mine on this deal, I'll get one step closer to that. But when you put people first and you're running your business in a Christ-like manner, God returns tenfold. And that deal that you maybe you lost out on 30,000 that you could have brought home, I truly believe that is going to turn into millions in your future.
I would agree.
Because you didn't screw that person over. And who knows, maybe that lady, and it might take 20 years for that to come to fruition, but that lady knows someone that she can connect with you that has money, and boom, we have no idea how running a Christ-like business is going to benefit us in the future.
Completely agree.
So you mentioned Akil and meeting him at church or whatever. So he does insurance and financial advisor. Start off insurance.
More financial advising. Yeah. So stocks, investments.
So
nothing guaranteed. I would say, keep in mind, I was the teacher. So his business partner's husband passed. That was another tough time. Like when I was done teaching, so I would always go to his house. He was struggling with his heart. And he was like my safe haven. I would always help. Anyway, he died. He had his fourth open heart surgery, and it was like really, really hard. So he and I would just always not pay attention at every financial advising meetings. Like, honestly, had no clue. And so then all of a sudden, here I am starting this business, and all of these things that I should have been paying attention to.
Come back full circle.
Oh yeah. And, just never guarantee anything. What is an IRA? What are stocks? What are bonds? What is annual interest? All of these common words that everyone should know in investment. Like, I didn't know any of that. Like, truly, I was a preschooler trying to figure all this out. So then here I am asking Akil a bunch of questions, and he always says I don't listen, which sometimes I don't. But, he would talk at me, and I'm like, you are a really crappy teacher. Like, as a teacher, you need to know I'm understanding. There needs to be a two-way conversation, because you've already lost me like 5 minutes ago. And so he was super excited that I was all excited about now all of this language. And so, I've taken off and learned a lot. And I would say, this is what I'm doing all day long. And then I'll have these conversations, and he's like, well, have you thought about this? And I'm like, dude, I've been thinking about that for like the last 10 days. So there's a lot of, I'm still like, people still see me as a teacher and not knowing. And I'm like, I'm learning, like it's coming around. Yeah. I'm growing, and I'm not like, I left teaching as I was a cooperating teacher for principals now and amazing teachers. And I was at the top of, I was in leadership positions. So that's where I was. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to be back there. So
I feel like the world of financial advisors and more private equity in the stock world and real estate investors and that type of private equity, it's like the difference between Portuguese and Spanish. Like they're similar, they're similar enough to where you kind of have an idea of what each other are saying, but they're different enough to where you don't fully grasp it all. And I have some, a lot of understanding in that side of the business. And I remember a couple times where we sat down and you just said, "Can you just tell Akil about this?" And so I explained to him, he's like, "Jamie, why didn't you just say that?"
I did say that.
But it's because the education that we get in real estate is so much different than it is in stock investing. And even though, you should have an understanding of how they both influence each other, it's completely different.
Yeah. So I will say it was, it was July of 2 years ago. So this is when I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And we went to a conference. It was a financial advising conference. And there was a gentleman that I met there. He's a very well-known financial advisor in like the brokerage. And I had no idea who he was. Super nice guy, all the above. And he's like, "So what do you do for a living?" And I was like, this is just not the time to ask. I'm going through identity crisis. Like, he goes, "Huh?" I said, like, seriously, this is not the time to ask. And I had just talked to Akil about, who am I? I'm going to wholesale. At that time, I didn't feel like I could call myself a real estate investor at that time. Like I didn't. So I'm like, here I am, a wholesaler that nobody respects. That's where my mindset was. And so this gentleman, he was like, "Jamie, go and do it." And I was like, "Huh?" And he goes, "If that's the tool that he was talking all this language, is like, just do what you want to do. Who cares what people think about you?" So that guy got his phone number, exchanged, didn't realize he was like a speaker at the conference and does really well. He actually was my private lender on that first deal, was going to give me the funds to fix and flip that house. So anyway, we continued to talk like every week or, once a month, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm helping his kids learn how to find deals. And he's now my private lender. And he actually is the one that told me, he goes, "You have to understand there is a difference. Financial advisors don't always know everything about real estate, and they're completely different." And so he basically said, give your husband grace. Like when people don't know, it's truly because they don't know. Well, he has 30 rentals and he wants 90 rentals in the next 5 years. So he invests in Cincinnati, but he's willing to come here too. So if there's ever any deals, like
I just think
he'll
it's
come
funny.
here as well.
I mean, so much similarity in how your personality and Nicole's, my wife Nicole, because we go to events. Like I remember going to a College World Series and we're at one of the tents for, a big bank in town, and I'm over there networking and I'm the one who's always out golfing. I'm always trying to, meet other, business people. And so I'm trying to climb my way up and get to know people in the bank and whatever. And I afterwards came back and sat down with Nicole and I was like, "I just met, the whatever vice president of, sales and stuff like that. We're going to go get coffee this week." He's like, "Oh, from which bank?" And I was like, "Yeah, so-and-so." It's like, "Oh, I was just sitting with the owner's wife. We're actually going to go, do that." I was like, she just goes up and like, she hates the middleman. She goes right to the top. And it's just like, everything that we do is cut out the middleman, whether it's buying makeup from a retail store. Nope, I'm going to go straight to the wholesaler or straight to the distributor and all that stuff. And her mentality is just like that. Like, why can't I go talk to that person? Like, that's a person, So I just think it's cool that you said that.
And if they don't want to talk to me, then I really don't want to talk to you. So.
Whereas I'm the type where I don't even like talking to people to order a pizza. I would, if it doesn't have an online ordering, I'm ordering DoorDash,
Yeah.
So why do you think financial advisors or stay clear of real estate, in your opinion?
What I have learned is that there's no security. That would be the biggest, like,
security meaning like how they get paid or how they
like what is it called when your stocks and investments like are secure or it's like protected?
Insured?
Insured. I don't really know. Honestly, still to this day, I'll walk in a room full of a bunch of financial advisor. Like, want to invest in real estate? Do you know anything about a self-directed IRA? Because that's where I'm going next. And I think it's important to diversify your portfolio, truly. Just learning all of it. I think you should have stocks and investments and with Akil, and I think you should invest in real estate. I do. I think it's important. I think there's also a lot of hidden money, like, right, equity in your house, like taking the equity out of your house. Because for me, keep in mind, I'm like, we don't have the capital. Well, there's capital really everywhere. Like if you have equity in your house, I'm not going to take all that equity out and like put it into one. We need to take that equity out and put it as a down payment to our next 2 rentals. So I think just a lot of lack of knowledge, honestly. Like people just don't know. So I listen now to those financial advising meetings, and I have to put a zipper on my mouth sometimes because they don't really want to, Jamie, the teacher, was a lot better.
Well,
now
I
I'm
think it's extremely competitive. It's like a Red Sox, Yankees, or I don't know what the basketball equivalent would be to that, but that real estate people look at financial advisors as they don't know what they're talking about, and they look at us like you guys are all dumb, like kids in the playground. And there's such a push pull with that. I think it's funny to have that in one household to me.
Which that's also like the teaching. Like I said, everything was safe there. Dream big, do what you want to do. So when I go out in this world, I'm like, why is everybody fighting? Why is there so much greed? Why is I'm so confused. Why were you mean? We teach happiness in the school. We need to teach more finance, but yeah, that was a huge shift of being in an environment for safety for so long. And then you get out into this world. I'm like, holy cow.
Well, and then the safety thing has been a reoccurring theme in this. When you're going back and trying to apply for W-2 jobs and those proverbial doors are getting slammed in your face, how were you able to shift into knocking on doors and literally having a door slammed in your face?
So I would say, one, I was pissed off when I got rejected. And actually I was more pissed off because I'm like, I could make you guys a lot of money. Like I did know my value of like, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. The knocking on the doors came from, I knew that Scott was successful and he taught me everything he knew. So I was like, you know what? Somebody's taking a chance on me right now. And at that time, like nobody was, so I was like, I just wanted to be a part of something. And I really wasn't even a part of him. He just told me what to do. I was like, well, I guess it's going to work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And do you think that is because you came up in sports growing up, that having someone holding you accountable causes you to want to excel so much, even though it's not that you fear disappointing him, but to a point, it's
the accountability is huge for me.
Yeah.
So even right now, so after Dallas, Scott was sending his mailers out in Pinellas County. Well, it's flooded. So we're doing a few things together, like on a lead system and just trying to get some leads and honestly flip houses, myself and continue to do what we want to do. And I was like, this is so stupid. We're already sharing a lead generation system. Like they're great leads. Why don't you just come to Omaha and like spend your money and we'll like double it. Right. So then this last week, he's like, all right, let's do it. Like we were doing Q4 planning and he's like, well, if I'm going to invest in Omaha, we should probably do this planning together. And I was like, huh? And so then when you do your planning, you talk about your goals and then you talk about issues and then what's the solution. And the issue was you need to learn how to close, like you do, like, and I do. So I have to learn how to close. But at the end of the day, it's like, you just that teamwork and now knowing that he's coming here or wanting to invest here, I'm like, oh snap, it's time to step it up. Right. You can't have those moments of like, oh, I don't feel like getting up anymore. It's like, oh, there's somebody else that's relying on me, which I do like. So, and I have to be accountable because somebody else is relying on me. So I have to make sure that I do my work and do whatever.
So you're doing a formal business thing together, or is this kind of see where this takes us type thing?
I think see where it takes us. I mean, he's one too. At the very beginning, I was like, I just need a partner. He's like, Jamie, you don't need a partner. And I was like, why not? He's like, just do partners like by the deal. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. Right. Like,
yeah, everybody wants to get married from deal one.
I had no idea. Like, that's my type of person though. I'm like, I would partner with you. I even talked to Scott about like, oh, I like these people. They're really cool. He's like, don't do it. I was like, I thought he was dumb. I'm like, why are you telling me not to partner? I didn't know, and it's like now that I trusted God. I truly did. I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm trusting God. And even though, I mean, yes, I'm trusting this guy that I really don't know, but I was trusting God that whole time. And I'm just like, all right, God, you're never going to leave me astray. Like, I'm just going to do whatever. And even if there's something that goes wrong, I'm still going to learn. Even if I lost money, it was going to be okay because I would have had to invest that in college tuition anyway. Right. So it wasn't like I was losing out. So
It's a great point that you make, because like people drop $100,000 on college education. They won't spend a penny on personal education, like to learn sales or how to close a deal, marketing, all those soft skills that you need to run your own business. Like, I don't quite understand. I think it's going back to education society. Like we've normalized college. Everybody should go to college. It's a right. You were born in America, you should go to college. And so we just normalize it. And I'll drop $100,000. I'll take student loans out. I'll be in debt for the rest of my life. I'll get $100,000 in debt to get a $40,000 teaching gig. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But
I agree with you.
People do it all the time. So,
and that's just me being a teacher, right? But that's also like, I honestly did not learn entrepreneurship and business owning until a year ago. And now all of a sudden my kids are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, like if you're going to be a nurse, yeah, you'll need to go to school. If you're going to be a teacher, yeah, you're going to go to school, but like dream big. Like, I feel like we do put these kids in a bubble. Like, I mean, I remember I would teach kids, you need to act this way because when you're working for somebody, you're going to get fired. No, run your own dang business and you can do what you want. Right now, yes, you do need to learn those skills to work for somebody so that you could be a good business owner. But it was very seldom where I taught, who do you want to work for? Like that was the conversation. It was never, what kind of business do you want to run?
So I got a kid in high school, a kid in junior high, and a kid in elementary school. And I can almost see the difference in each one from like an education standpoint, meaning like in kindergarten through 4th, 5th grade, like you can be whatever you want in the world. Mm-hmm. And then once you get to junior high, now they start grooming you a little more for working for the W-2 realm. And then by the time high school comes, like you have to go to college, you have to get a degree in something, lack of a better term, to be slave to the man, to get that W-2. And it's just interesting watching the progression, because go talk to any kindergartner or second grade, third grade.
You
astronaut president,
Correct.
Yeah. And then you move up into
go to 7th, 8th grade and talk to them.
But you guys
go to junior year. And
it's never running a business though either. It's always something else. It's never, the business ownership.
Why do you think that is?
It's not taught. Like, I mean, it's just, unless your dad or mom runs a business, that's just not your mindset.
So is that because the teachers don't have the experience or they haven't been around it? Like you said, teaching is not typically a high dollar, activity. So they just are unfamiliar with it? Or is it the curriculum that you're instructed to teach doesn't include that at all?
I would think a little bit of both, because it wasn't until my last 2 years where I taught high school when I realized some of the kids that I was teaching needed to start their own business, or like kind of, they probably weren't going to be able to work for somebody else. And so my mindset was like, okay, if they're not going to work, how can they start their own business?
Well, what kind of traits did you see in those kids that you're thinking of?
Well, I mean, I did have some behavior kids, some of them were drug dealers, honestly. And it was really sad. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. How can this kid still be successful? Right? They're doing this because it's survival, honestly, and some of the stories that I've had with the kids. But then it's like, okay, you could do pharmaceutical sales. Well, I don't want to do pharmaceutical sales. And it's, and then it was like, exactly. I was like, at least do it the right way and legally. And so I would have these conversations with them. And we would, we read the Energy Bus book in one of our English classes, and just truly getting the understanding of these kids, like, how do you dream big? How do you do this? And I don't know, just it's lack of it wasn't until my last couple of years where I'm like, there's got to be something more out there. So,
well, and so now looking back, do you look at the kids that kind of acted out, or maybe they couldn't sit still in a chair and stuff, and you
like
think
they're
back,
going to own the business. That's
Right.
where yeah, definitely. And I did have those conversations with different people. Like they might not work for anybody, but I hope that they can own something.
So
And
I mean, obviously the environment of teaching is sit in a chair, look at this curriculum, pass the standardized test, move on to the next year. I mean, do you think that there needs to be, I know I keep asking you systemic questions, but those types of students would thrive in the entrepreneurial space, but they don't have the environment to be able to do that. And they don't even know what that is. And I mean, what?
So I've been at a couple different districts, and I will say, like, my kids are at Westside now, and that's where I taught, and they have the most, the grass, you don't realize the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but I like love Westside, and I feel like it is I'm not promoting Westside, but I kind of am. They have modular scheduling, and they have personal finance, they have marketing, it's the most Montessori school I feel like you could possibly, it's not Montessori, it's public school, but they have so much voice and choice in leading kids to where they want to go. And I think other schools probably have that too. So I'm not necessarily familiar with all of them, but they strive towards that.
So Valerie just had a 20-year reunion, and they did a walk to schools thing. She graduated from Papillion La Vista, and they had a lot of that they were doing. So they had like a plumbing division. You can go learn plumbing. You can go learn CAD. You can go learn 3D printing. Like you can learn all these welding and all that stuff. But the problem, from what they told them, the problem is, we use welding as an example. To have someone come and teach welding at $25 an hour when they can make $50, $75, $100 an hour in the private sector. Like they can't keep somebody there. Someone has to have, going back to what you said, they have to have the heart to want to teach.
Yeah.
That versus it's not a job, like it's a service for them, and they have to lose money basically to do it. So that's the struggle with those type of things. But I think they're great.
I do too. I think too, like personal finance, my daughter's in that, and I'm like, that is going to be the number one class that you need to really pay attention to out of all of them. And I know that they don't do that all the time, but I'm like, I think they should have a personal finance class every single year. Like that business, I think that is huge, that part of it.
We've been contemplating pulling our kids, not because the schools they go to aren't good, but just for freedom. Like Nebraska is pretty good. Like where I'm from, Louisiana, you miss more than 10, 15 days. Like you're getting court summons. Like it's like they're strict about it. In Nebraska, they don't care as much. Like you miss as much as school as you want, as long as you're making up the work. But we've just from a freedom standpoint of been able to take more time off, longer weekends, stuff like that. But it's just, it's hard to.
It is. I think just having those teachers, I think is huge too. Like, when the kids can relate to the teachers and the experiences that they have. I mean, I do think Nebraska has a really good, solid education. But when you're in it for so long, and now I'm, 41, and I'm like, gosh, there's a lot of things that, we could definitely change to help enhance the community and our kids in general, in my opinion. But
I think people put too much onus on the government, school board being, part of the government, the superintendent stuff to do what's right by your kid. But like you said, you didn't know anything about personal finance. So if the school's not teaching them personal finance, you don't know anything about personal finance, where are they going to learn it?
I think that's huge. And that's kind of more the point I was getting to is I saw an interview recently with a former CIA operative, and he was talking about how people have all these conspiracy hats on, that the CIA is behind, everything. And he's like, one, if they were behind JFK, I wouldn't tell you. And two, you're thinking of the CIA as this like super, high tech, state of the art business. It's not. It's run like the DMV, and everyone there is a federal employee. Like they are just very good at a certain skill. And maybe that certain skill is interviewing, or it's deception, or it's something like that. And when people talk about the schooling system, back to the Rothschild and, that whole backstory about creating employees, I think it's a lot more of the nurture than it is the nature of teaching, because you're right, the teachers don't have entrepreneurial experience. And part of me, when you're saying, if you have a welder that's over there, teaching for 25 an hour and they could make 75, not to take away from the ones who do have a true kind heart, but is it possible they just couldn't make it as a welder? And so now they're teaching, I don't have that answer.
Teaching is like, once again, it's safe. Like I could go back to teaching. I'm never say never, right? I'm like, those days where I'm like, oh my gosh, do I really want to run a business? Maybe I should just go back to teaching. And then I'm like, nope, I'm good.
There's saying to what you say, what is it? Or what you were just getting at, but those that can't do, teach.
Right.
Right. And it's sad to say, but there is some truth to that. Like I said, when I was in the military, there's two types of people in the military: those that can't do anything else, and those that love it. And I'm sure a lot of it's the same for the teachers. Like some people that do it because it's safe and they can't do anything else, maybe, but there's others that do it because they love it. So.
Well, but also even the ones that can't do anything else, they just do it and they hate it the whole time. Their identity is tied so much to the thing that they're doing that when they lose that and that's stripped away from them, or they get hurt and can no longer serve, there's a lot of disabled vets that just lose their entire identity. And especially going through basic training where it's break you down, build you up, but they build you back up. When they're putting those pieces back together, they're making sure to weave their military stitch into every bit of that. And that was a struggle for me too. It was like, I've been in the Army since I was 17. That was my entire identity. It's like when people ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm in the Army. And what you do becomes who you are. And I think that losing that identity, it crushes people.
Yeah.
No matter what field you're in. And so when people can attach their identity to a new thing, I think that the other thing that comes with that is your identity needs to be a child of God. And this is just a thing that I'm doing to feed my family, but it's not who I am.
Yep.
And that's something that I definitely still struggle with because, yesterday our brokerage went live and I go onto LinkedIn to update and you have to put a description under your photo. Like, who are you? And I'm like, I don't want to be broker. I don't want to be investor. I don't want to be developer. Who am I? And so I had that struggle that you're talking about of finding my identity again. And who do I want to be in this space, or how do I want others to perceive me?
Right. That's something too. I feel like, Jesus was a teacher, right? So for me, I will always be a teacher. And like when I help people in foreclosure, like we help people in distress situations. Like whatever it is, divorce, vacant homes, all the above. And so to be able to have enough knowledge to help these people out, I'm always going to be a teacher. And I'm always going to be a coach and a problem solver.
Even if that's just teaching that person that they have options. I think that's huge.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I definitely want to go a mile deep into that ethical dilemma of, leaving 60,000 on the table and stuff because that's stuff that fascinates me. I don't know where I would stand on that, but I mean, to the people who are looking at a deal or an opportunity like that, what kind of guide? Obviously, open the good book, and then find your answers. But how do you, or what advice would you give them to discern the ethical answer versus this could provide a lot for my family?
I mean, I think that's something that I'm struggling with. Right. That was something Scott told me. He's like, you need to learn your value. And it wasn't on this deal. And I'm like, I'm priceless. Truly, I'm a child of God. What is my value? When I think of money, I think of if I could just make as what I did as a teacher, I'm good. Well, now when you run a business, you're putting money into your business. So if we start to do direct mail and we're putting money in and we at least need to get that money back. Well, what if there's an opportunity where I can make 60 grand on a deal? Right. But I do think at the end of the day, I think God discerns your heart. He lets you know. I truly do. I had somebody say the other day, I don't think so-and-so should get, 20 grand on a wholesale fee when I'm making 20 grand here. And I'm like, do you know how much money what I've been doing to get you 20 grand where you didn't even have to do any, like I gave you this deal and you're making 20 grand and you didn't have to go find it. Right. So to me, it's more of like, how can we leverage each other? So I like the people that understand, like, wow, you put in this much time to get me this deal. But I also know that you spent a ton of time to learn, your contracting skills and like what it takes to flip a house. Right. So like that end investor, the relationship building, it's like, how can you, work with your end buyers where everyone's winning, and understanding everyone's values and like what they can bring to the table.
And I think kind of what you were just saying, at the end of the day, it comes down to transparency.
Mm-hmm.
This lady, she said, I'll be happy with $5,000. Okay. I know I could sell this for 120.
Mm-hmm.
You're at 68 or whatever. We'll call it 70 just for round numbers. So I will give you an extra 25. So now you got 30,000. I'll take the other 30,000. Basically splitting it and using those words and speaking to her and say, hey, I think this is a deal for me. I think this is where I can get it. I have marketing fees,
Mm-hmm.
finding you wasn't free. Like I had to, however,
Mm-hmm.
pay somebody a referral fee or, however you're doing it, direct mail or PPC or, however you're marketing. So being transparent and say, I will give you an extra 25 grand. You said you only need 5. I'll give you 25 extra. And just being forthright, and you may
Mm-hmm.
get it, you may not get it. She might be upset that you're getting 30 grand and she's getting 30 grand. Who knows? But
and I think that's what most wholesalers are. That's why they don't disclose those things. They keep everyone in the dark because they believe that as soon as someone finds out how much money they're going to make, they're going to want more of their own pie because they operate out of greed. They assume everyone else operates out of greed.
Mm-hmm.
When I've seen sellers before where been fully transparent on, what we're making and stuff, and they go, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that.
So I had a deal. It's kind of funny you mentioned this. I had a deal bought from a wholesaler, and he didn't want to share the contract with me, or that's how I perceived it. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to see this original contract because I don't know what this original contract said. Like you could say, I need to dress up in a chicken costume at closing in order for this deal to close. Like there's no telling what you put in there. I was like, I don't care if you white out the wholesale fee. But everything else I want to see.
You're getting that contract. You should know what you're getting.
You're
Absolutely.
That's what you're doing. You're signing that contract to me. And that's, I did end up getting the contract, but at closing, you still get to see what they made. Like it's on the docs at closing. So I don't know.
Well, for me, when I came up in the industry, wholesalers were constantly saying, hey, I got this property. I was always on the phone, come walk this property, come walk it, because I had buyers. And so I'd walk the properties. And when I get there, they go, oh, all right, you need to tell them that you're an insurance adjuster or you're,
I can't do that.
You're my uncle or something dumb like that. And I was, no, I'm not doing that. If they ask, I'm going to tell them I'm a real estate agent. Like I'm trying to help solve this problem too. Like you
can say you're a partner, I would be as
well.
So I'm actually very honest with the buyers. So like now and at the beginning, I had a hard time, right? It was bring contractors in. They're not contractors, they're investors. And I really struggled with that because I'm like, that's not true, right? So in my mind, I was like, I tell my sellers, first of all, now I'm like, I'm looking to buy this myself. And if the numbers are right, I'll buy it. If not, I'm going to partner in. What this looks like is I bring contractors to one, give me a price to see how much it's going to fix and flip. But then also they might buy it and they will give me a fee based on what my value is, honestly. And so I will make money. That's how I'll make money is I assign them this contract and that's how it works. And I always tell them, I'm like, so we need to make sure that the price that you're getting for this house is what you really want. Like, and I truly feel that. I mean,
have you ever had to go back and renegotiate?
Yeah, it sucks. I hate that.
What's that conversation like?
Well, there was this one house I actually had in West Side and they wanted they should have taken this offer. They really should have. Like I offered 150. I was like, I will find the private money to buy this house. I knew it was a good deal. They're like, no, we think we can get 180. And so I was like,
this is the seller.
Mm-hmm. And
which most sellers just have an arbitrary number that they're like, it would be nice if I got this. And they have no no reason for coming to that number. So
Right.
I know that objection.
So I could not find a buyer, and I let people know this is what I got it under contract for. Of course, this is what I'd like to make, but there's no way you're not even going to make money on, like, it was, that kind of bad. Anyway, they, like, I feel pretty confident with my sellers because I'm so honest. So it's like, we could operate on a handshake. However, you need to have those contracts in place. That family is now going through a short sale. Mm-hmm. And they should have just taken it for 150. Like, it would have been a great deal for everybody.
After they said 180 and say, are you sure you don't want to reconsider?
Mm-hmm. And, Yep. So that was actually last year. And I mean, I'm still in contact with the gentleman, and he's an electrician, and I invite him to RIA groups. It's just you never know. So,
and I think the question that I asked, you answered it perfectly, because that's what's on my mind. I think that the solution to the problem is just transparency. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you've sat down when I've talked to a seller before. That's how I tell them exactly how I do business. This is what I believe your property is worth right now as it sits. I'm going to have to put $100,000 into your property, and this is what I believe I'm going to sell it for. So I'm probably going to make this much money. Are you okay walking away from that? And they said, yes, we just want out of this situation. And I write my contracts as such, and I walk them through. I don't slide anything in there and be like, gotcha. I put stuff in there that says, you understand that this property could go up in value, and I walk them through it. And that's something that I think, not saying that I'm the voice of reason or I always do everything right, because I'm still learning too. But if you do deals that way, then nobody gets to the closing table and says, whoa, what do you mean you're making 30,000? I've seen tons of wholesalers that say, oh, I'm making 10,000 on this. And then they get to closing and it's 50. And everyone's sitting there like, oh, I'm not just going to not close now, and it's that little bit of broken trust is irreparable.
Right. Yep. I would agree. I think too, though, on some of the deals, like for me now, it's, do I take a wholesale fee? Like I'm like, if I'm going to partner with an investor, because I could bring the money, and it's like, okay, does this make sense for both of us? So I could be a participant in this and we could each make 25 grand, or I could be wholesale and make the 25 grand and you make a little bit more. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, what do I have a little bit of leverage on, like, how do I want to handle this? And do you want to partner with me? Because if not, I'll just take a little bit higher, because I could flip this myself now.
And that's negotiations in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I feel like people think that negotiations is one person wins, one person loses, right? And I've heard it said many different ways. There's start with no, getting to yes, all these different books about how to negotiate. And, the people that are just alpha males that say, if the other person doesn't leave crushed, then you left money on the table. And I don't believe that. I also have heard it the opposite, which is if a deal was done right, then both people leave the table upset. Yeah. Right? Which it sounds contrary to belief, but if both needs are being met, then sometimes both of them are leaving feeling like, I wish I could have got more, and I wish I could have got more. And the 180 on that is, if both people leave satisfied and no one feels like they got screwed in the process, to me, that's a winning transaction. That is all that buying and selling is.
I think that's so interesting too that you said that, because when you get in sales, you get to a point of, it's now about the money. And like I said, even the last couple months, it's like, okay, I'm going to invest a lot of money in marketing. What if I don't make this? What if I don't this? It's like, wait a second. God just kind of puts me in my place again and says, okay, when did you decide that it was about the money? Right? And when did you decide that, remember when I said I would take care of you? Remember when I said I've got your back? Remember when I'm like, oh yeah. Right. So I think, when you turn your eyes to the money, then we lose the focus. And I do believe God will always provide. Yes, you have to be smart, and God will give you that wisdom. And, but when you become a problem solver and you help people, like I think we all win. So,
well, I've been getting Ryan to let me talk for more and more and more. So I can tell when we're getting to the point where he's ready to call it. So,
well, I know you got to go pick up your kids here shortly. So.
Yeah. Hey, I think we didn't talk too much though, Tanner.
I know.
So is anything you want to say us out on, or what do you,
you guys, I give you deals. You just, if you have any deals for me, let me know.
What are you looking for?
Flips. Yeah, rentals, all the above. Honesty, transparency. That's it.
So if someone wants to reach out to you, they have a deal for you. Which the best way?
You can just contact me.
Contact
Give them my number.
Smoke signals. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, appreciate you coming through and talking with us and kind of airing all your dirty little secrets. So.
Yeah, dirty laundry.
Yeah. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
That was fun.
My pleasure.